and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're here. And today we are going to talk about this really common thing you've probably seen on Instagram many times before, but it's great advice, right? I'm not going to say we actually teach it ourselves, but it's food chaining, right? So a lot of parents think that by following the food chain that they see on different social media accounts, will be like the answer or solution to getting your kids to move from one food to a next. So, for example, I just saw one today that was, going from a chocolate chip cookie to eating blueberries. And it was a chain on different foods, like which foods to introduce next that will lead them eventually to eating blueberries, right? So you might think, well, if I just follow this and I introduce these foods in this specific order, that then my child will start eating blueberries. But I will caution that it is actually not that simple. And here's why, right? Because here is the piece that is missing from that post is that your child might have a different sensory profile and they actually might need different foods than the ones that are shown to get them to move from chocolate chip cookies to blueberries, right? So and it really depends on what their sensory profile is. Okay, so remember our sensory system, we have 8 sensory systems that are at work when we are eating. And all of those different systems work together all at the same time when we eat food, right? So just because that person mentioned a granola bar, if your child's sensory profile shows that things that are chewy or sticky don't really work well with them, it doesn't work well for their oral motor skills, it doesn't work well for their sensory system, then you introducing that granola bar is not going to serve you or them, right? It's just going to frustrate you, annoy, or make your child anxious, right? Because it just doesn't align with their sensory system. So the actual food chaining itself is a great idea, right? So food chaining is, like I said, you're getting from one food, their preferred food, to a new food, usually, ideally, a healthier food, right? Right. So, and it has to usually be somewhat similar characteristic wise to the current food, right? So if you are starting off with something crunchy, the next food is probably going to be crunchy. So, we do that as well, but if you don't know somebody's sensory profile, you might be suggesting things or going off on a tangent, but using the wrong types of foods that wouldn't align quite as well with their sensory system. So that's really, I think, the missing key to a lot of those posts. So I'm not totally knocking them. I think they're great ideas and they might get your wheels spinning, but you don't want to make the mistake of taking it verbatim as like, well, this is the roadmap. This is the key. All I have to do is follow these things and then bam, my kid's going to eat those blueberries, right? And if it was that easy, there would just be a book of food chaining. And it's like, well, here are the list of foods your child is eating. And this is the roadmap to get to all of the different foods using these very specific foods, right? It really has to be a dynamic between understanding your child's oral motor skills and their sensory system. And the marriage of those will then lead you to learn how to food chain really effectively. So you're not just taking random pieces of food or things that you see in the store that you're like, oh man, I bet they'd like this, right? If you don't know their oral motor skills and their sensory profile, then that food might be a complete waste of time and money for you and for them, right? So my goal is to, teach your parents exactly how to food chain, but in a way that works with their sensory system and their oral motor skills. So that's why in our Unlocking Mealtimes course, we teach parents, well, we give you your child's sensory profile, right? And their oral motor skills. So, after speaking with your feeding coach, which direction you need to go in with your kids. So you don't waste time and money just pulling random things from the shelf that you think might work, might look good. They might like, maybe it has like, there's a box with their favorite character on it. And you're like, I'm going to try these. It has their favorite character on it. I bet they'll eat them. But if that doesn't really work with, again, their oral motor skill set and their sensory profile, that food probably will not be of interest to them, unfortunately. They might love the box, but eating the food might be a different story, right? And of course, this isn't for every kid, and it might work for your kid. I'm not saying it won't, if it aligns with their oral motor skills and their sensory profile, right? So knowing this and keeping this in the back of your mind when you're looking through Instagram and you're seeing those stories about how to food chain, just keep in the back of your mind that there are two other factors that are very specific to your child that you need to take into account before you follow that food chain, right? So I'm not saying don't try it. I'm just saying know that there is a little bit more to that story. So if you feel like this is really important for you to learn, we do teach you exactly how to food chain and how to master it, really. And we have a really awesome specific chart that helps you track and complete your food chaining activities. And, we give you all of the information about your child's specific oral motor skill set, your child's specific sensory profile, that will help you to make really wise food choices when it comes to, well, what food do I try next? What is going to be the most likely food that I can get them to eat next, right? Because just trying random things usually doesn't work. I'm not saying that if you're at a barbecue, you shouldn't put a little bit of a new food on their plate just because it's there. I'm just saying that you're going to have much greater success with the food exposure, right? Theory of like keep exposing them to new foods if that food fits their oral motor skills and their sensory profile. So like I said, if this is you, definitely start your journey at thepickyeaterstest.com, which will tell you what type of picky eater we have, right? So I don't know what type of picky eater your child is. Are they very fearful? Are they stuck on certain foods? Are they a little bit more curious about foods? Or are they a foodie and don't need our help whatsoever, right? This quiz will give you that information. And then we can help show you how our course can help tailor a plan specifically to your child. So we hope to see you in there. If not, we will see you in next week's episode. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater. To learn more about achieving your child's feeding goals, check out Christine's website at foodologyfeeding.com. And be sure to tune in next time to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater.